Police now saying that the two 17-year-olds found dead behind a grocery store were murdered.
He said at that point, he got the female out of the car and made her lean over the hood from the side of the car.
Now, if you've ever snuck out of your home to attend a party or meet up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, this story will hit differently. When these two teenagers decided to meet in an isolated area for a steamy session, they never imagined it would be their last. Let's explore the case of a high school sweetheart date that ended in a brutal murder. Natalie Henderson was 17 years old and attending Roswell High School. She was described as smart, sassy, funny, and free-spirited. She was a leader of her school's color guard, a lifeguard, and a talented singer and guitar player. Those who knew Natalie said that she had a loving heart and an infectious zest for life. She marched to the beat of her own drum and was not afraid to be herself. Natalie was also an animal lover and volunteered countless times at the local animal rescue center. When this really awful incident happened, Natalie had just started hanging out with a boy by the name of Carter Davis, a football player and lacrosse star from River Ridge High School, 10 miles from Natalie's school. Carter was also 17 years old and described as a smart, optimistic guy who was always smiling and joking around. Carter was involved in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and hoped to play lacrosse in college. In an essay he had posted on a lacrosse recruiting website, Carter wrote that he loved challenges and wanted a school that offered an engineering program, saying, "I lettered in football and lacrosse for my junior year, but made the extremely tough decision not to play football my senior year to stay healthy for lacrosse. I have always had the ability to handle adversity, no matter how extreme it would be." On July 31st, 2016, late in the evening, Natalie and Carter snuck out of their homes to meet up. This was the last time anyone ever saw them alive again. The next morning at around 6 a.m., a delivery driver discovered two bodies behind the local Publix store. The police later identified the bodies as Natalie and Carter. Natalie had been posed in a salacious position, while Carter's arms were spread out to each side as if on a cross. Autopsy reports said that the teenagers appeared to have been posed after their deaths, and they both died from a single bullet wound to the head. The murder was estimated to have happened at around 3 in the morning.
This morning, families in suburban Atlanta are worried for their children, with police now saying that the two 17-year-olds found dead behind a grocery store were murdered.
Well, it's very scary. You want to think that your kids are safe at all times, but you just don't ever know.
Police say a delivery driver found the bodies of Natalie Henderson and Carter Davis near two vehicles early Monday morning. Investigators are now looking at video from surveillance cameras aimed at the parking lot where they were found, hoping for clues.
As investigators started talking to the workers at the store and looking through the CCTV footage, they learned that a white Honda Passport was seen in the area around the time of the murder. The car was soon traced to a guy called Jeffrey Hazelwood. Jeffrey was a 20-year-old guy who had been living with his grandparents for years after his mother, who was an addict, was found to be an unfit parent. From a young age, his grandparents noticed that Jeffrey was not like other kids and had severe behavioral issues. They tried getting him psychiatric help several times, but nothing seemed to work. As he got older, it became impossible for his grandparents to manage him, and the police had to be involved. In fact, police reports show that police had been called 8 times since 2010 to the Hazelwood home on issues related to Jeffrey. In one incident in 2013, police were called after Jeffrey, then 16, was suspected of stealing a sword and knife from his grandparents' gun safe. The report, which does not identify Jeffrey by name, says that he told his grandmother, and I quote, "He was going to blow and people were going to get hurt." A neighbor later saw him swinging the sword around and throwing the knives in the front yard and called the cops. In another incident in 2015, the police were called again after a rifle went missing from his grandparents' house. His grandparents kicked him out after this, and he had been living with friends and relatives ever since. Now, investigators looked through his phone records and social media and found that Jeffrey worked at a local Michael's store. He had posted a selfie on Instagram wearing an employee vest saying, Work sucks, but I have to cause trying to get my life straight. His Instagram also shows that he had a girlfriend who had posted another picture saying, "How did I get so lucky to find such a beautiful, kind, loving, talented, and caring girlfriend? I love you beyond words, forever and always." Still, Jeffrey also harbored some really dark thoughts and would sometimes post them on social media, like in this post where he says, "Why the F should I live? Can't do right. All I do is hurt everybody, even the ones I love more than my life and swore to never hurt. I am beyond up. There's no one left." In the morning following the slaying, police learned that Jeffrey was seen at a nearby gas station using Natalie's credit card while wearing a Guy Fawkes mask and speaking in a British accent. And get this, a day after the incident, Jeffrey was still posting selfies on Instagram acting like he didn't just take 2 lives. In one picture, his girlfriend had visited him at work, while in another, he was at a swimming pool posting, "Swimming is the one thing that holds me down. The water is a home. If I could breathe water instead of air, I would pass between the waves to live." The police were fortunately able to track him down, and 2 days after the incident, he was arrested and brought in for questioning.
On Wednesday morning, we had the suspect under surveillance, and the decision was made by officers on the scene to take him into custody. And when he was taken into custody, his vehicle was also seized.
When the police searched his room, they discovered drawings and writings in which Jeffrey expressed his desire to become an assassin. And when he was being questioned, he started acting all weird, shaking uncontrollably, curled up in his chair, and speaking in a whiny voice. He at first denied being the one responsible for the crime and even started crying when the detective showed him surveillance pictures of him running from the crime scene.
That's you running away the first time, after you shot them, running away.
He later confessed to the crime, telling the detective how he followed the 2 teens into an alley behind the grocery store and watched them for some time as they were making out at the back of Carter's car. He even climbed up to the roof of the store to get a better view. He then, for some reason, decided to approach the car and even opened the door. Carter allegedly confronted him, and Jeffrey hit him with a gun.
What did you say to them when you opened the door?
Listen, get out, right now.
Did you hit him?
Yes.
Okay. What did you hit him with?
Jeffrey told the detectives that he pulled the trigger on Carter because he was afraid of him. He then ordered the terrified girl to get out of the vehicle and forced her to take all her clothes off before violating her with his hand. He allegedly then forced her to face the car and put her hands on the hood before spanking her and then pulling the trigger. When the detective asked him why he did it, Jeffrey started talking about voices in his head that told him to do it.
The bad guy would have gotten you. That's the story that we're going with. The invisible bad guy that looks just like you. Give me a break. Give me a break.
Although the police could not find a connection between Jeffrey and the teenagers or learn what his motive really was, they did get the confession and the evidence they needed to charge him with multiple charges, including 2 counts of aggravated assault and theft. During his preliminary hearing, Jeffrey was behaving in much the same way that he was when he was being interrogated. Although this time around, he was also talking to himself and petting an imaginary animal. He was also seen wearing a wedding ring, despite the fact that he was not married, and he avoided eye contact with the families of his victims. One of his lawyers explained that Jeffrey had a mental illness and had not taken his medication since he was jailed. His defense tried to convince the judge that Jeffrey was incompetent to stand trial, even bringing in Jeffrey's former psychiatrist who testified that Jeffrey was suffering from hallucination, a fear of being spied on, hearing voices, and a depressed mood. Another psychiatrist told the court that Jeffrey told him he was hearing voices on the days leading to the killings. Although the psychiatrist did confirm that Jeffrey could be suffering from a mental illness, he could not specifically say what the condition was.
I do believe that Mr. Hazelwood has a mental illness. We have struggled with exactly putting a label on his mental illness. He definitely has some difficulties with social interactions, understanding visual cues that are consistent with the Asperger's, but he never quite fit into the full spectrum of an autistic disorder.
The detective who interrogated Jeffrey also testified in the hearing, and as she told the court how Jeffrey had assaulted Natalie, Natalie's mom broke into tears, probably imagining the horror that her daughter must have gone through before she died.
He said at that point, he got the female out of the car and made her lean over the hood from the side of the car. And he said that he spanked her.
At some point, the detective also got emotional while explaining everything that Jeffrey had told her. After the hearing, the judge decided that Jeffrey was competent to stand trial, and there was enough evidence against him to take the case forward. However, even before the trial started, Jeffrey, on the advice of his lawyers, took a plea deal and pleaded guilty but mentally ill. Before he was sentenced, Natalie and Carter's family and friends were given a chance to give impact statements on how Jeffrey's actions had affected them. Natalie's family talked about all of the things Natalie will never get to do, and all of the things they would miss about her.
She will never get to fulfill her dream of becoming an architect. Natalie will never experience the incredible joy and love of having children of her own. She will never get the chance to change the world for the better. As her family, we will never again hear her beautiful singing or hear her playing her guitar around the house.
Carter's family also talked about their son's loving personality and how his death had impacted the entire family.
How can I tell you of the impact on our life of not having this gift, this incredible energy who was always all in, gone and absent forever? I think of Carter's lacrosse teams. He was scouted heavily and was highlighted on a national site for a lacrosse player to look out for. How can I explain the impact of watching lacrosse without our number 4 on the field?
After listening to the statements, the judge finally sentenced Jeffrey to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, if you think that was the last time anyone would hear about Jeffrey, you would be mistaken, because while in prison, Jeffrey made the news again in 2017 when he posted a selfie on social media.
The selfie was posted to Jeffrey Hazelwood's Instagram account last week. The same Jeffrey Hazelwood who was serving a life sentence at Baldwin State Prison in Milledgeville. His Facebook account also accepted a friend request from former CBS 46 reporter Christian De La Rosa. Right now, officials with the Department of Corrections are trying to figure out where the phone he used came from. But I've learned they've confiscated it, and Hazelwood will be disciplined for possession of a contraband cell phone.
What do you think about this case? What might have been Jeffrey's motive for taking Natalie and Carter's life? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.